So my name is Meléndez. I am CEO and co-founder of INNITI, and it's a tech startup making chemical researchers working in the laboratory innovate more and faster. And we do that by connecting all the lab equipment to our software platform, so that with a few clicks can automate the execution, data logging and documentation of the experiments. We have had different investments in our time. First we had two InnoBoosters from the Industriens Foundation. Applying for the InnoBooster program allowed us to get some initial funding without being liquidated. And so we met the first investor, Accelerator Capital, at a conference in Lisbon called Web Summit, where the investors actually book meetings with the startups. So we had a 15-minute sit down and we kind of got to know each other. And then the second investor was a bit more tricky because there was more like cold calling. It's an interesting process because you have to take a lot of no's, especially when you're at our stage, which is the first round. Most funds I see would rather go in on the second round. But then we found the Danish Growth Foundation that have just introduced a new program called Early Engagement, which is matching the investment from a VC. Like I talk quite often with both investors, both to get advice, but also to keep them in the loop. Every month I send them a written report about what happened this month. So that's both tech milestones in terms of what happened in the organization, commercial side, and just if there's anything I feel that's relevant to mention. But else I try to not spend more than a few hours on it. I also send them kind of our spending for the previous month so they can see what they would spend all of this lovely cash on. I think our situation is quite representative for how startups normally communicate with the investors, at least if they raise with VCs. Because the VCs have a lot of companies to manage, so they also have limited time for your company, which I think is quite nice because I wouldn't like an investor to come in and micromanage and question every decision we make. But I think it's just important to align the expectations of the companies before. So if you're starting to raise capital, be aware that it takes a lot of time. We've spent I think 6 months on it. Yeah, I think it's about timing because it's a long process and it's hard to focus on anything else in the company in these at that time because you're often still very few people. We tried to postpone this not as much as we could, but quite some time so we could get some soft funding in first. Make a nice slide deck, send it out to a lot of VCs, and also take some time to actually narrow down which VCs you want to contact, because a lot of them are specialized within whatever domain, so you might as well just focus on those that are relevant for your startup. Check up on the investors, and most of them they should be willing to say, okay, you can contact this guy from the startup, and if they're not, that's maybe a little indication that something is not as it should be. Seeking investors is just kind of part of the game, I think. It's about being a bit bold, and it's the balance between overselling your idea and being honest, right? Because you need to sell something that has a greater potential and is maybe a bit further than it actually is in reality, and you can kind of conquer the world, but not to an extent where they feel cheated once the papers are signed. Reach out to somebody, hopefully you know from CC or like, helped us learn a lot both about their approach, kind of the whole game, because they are also trying to play you in some way. So I would seek some advice from somebody who have just recently raised.